There are rumors circulating that Tracy Quartermaine may make the decision to exact revenge on Drew Cain and Nina Reeves, according to General Hospital spoilers. Despite all of the custody problems, will Tracy finally reveal the passion partners and their relationship? It was previously arranged by Ned Quartermaine and Tracy that they would keep this information to themselves since Tracy intended to use it as leverage over Nina at some point in the future. However, it's possible Tracy will forego that idea in favor of obtaining a nice dose of payback. In light of the fact that Drew has already provided Tracy with more than enough reasons to want to destroy his life, particularly because he has blamed her for the drugging incident. Tracy isn't too happy with Nina either, particularly since she's on Willow Corinthos' side in this custody fight. After Tracy receives any new information regarding Nina's decision to reveal to Rick Lansing that she is the father of SASHA Corbin's child, the gloves may finally come off. Even while Tracy might be relieved that the truth regarding SASHA's real baby daddy has been revealed, she will not be pleased with the harm that has been done to Michael Corinthos' case. Tracy may fume over all this, launching SASHA's early labor as well, and start to feel that Nina deserves to pay the price. In the end, it's possible that conserving that advantage won't be as important to Tracy as getting revenge. Drew will also make a move to impede Michael and Willow's attempt at reaching a peaceful resolution during the week of June 9th to 13th, while General Hospital spoilers indicate that this will take place. That could be another avenue to enraging Tracy and setting up a stunning exposure, one that could destroy Willow's heart and leave her outraged. In the event that Tracy is going to reveal Drew and Nina's previous affair, there are a few possible eventualities that need to be taken into consideration. It is possible that Tracy will make certain that the information regarding such hookups is disclosed in court prior to the decision being made. That might assist reinforce the notion that Drew's clandestine master manipulator, who only does what's best for him. It might make Willow's side of this struggle look much dirtier and make the court think twice about putting the kids in her care. On the other hand, it's possible Willow will pull off a court triumph. That might leave Tracy poised for payback, as she certainly won't let Willow and Drew go off to DC for their happily ever after. General Hospital spoilers predict Tracy could uncover Drew and Nina's secret hookups one way or another, so keep tuned. Tracy had never been one to keep her tongue, especially when the stakes were high, and this time they were sky high. In a town like Port Charles, secrets have a half-life, and the one Tracy had been sitting on had reached critical mass. For weeks, she'd watched the fissures grow beneath the surface of Drew and Nina's carefully maintained deception. Their subtle glances, too frequent meetings, and the hushed tone of their chats hadn't gone unnoticed, not by her, and certainly not by others who knew how to read between the lines. But it was Tracy who ultimately decided it was time to drop the hammer. It wasn't only revenge that drove her. Sure, Tracy had her share of reasons to dislike Nina, from her interfering in Quartermaine relationships to her role in the SEC scandal that had nearly destroyed Drew. But more than anything, Tracy loathed hypocrisy. And what Nina and Drew were doing, pretending to be innocent while manipulating courtrooms, relationships, and even a fragile custody case, was the kind of two-faced behavior Tracy had spent her life eradicating. This time she wasn't going to let it slip. The time arrived sooner than planned. During a particularly stressful family meeting at the Quartermaine mansion, ostensibly to discuss ELQ restructuring, Tracy waited until the perfect moment. The room was filled with suspicion already. Michael had arrived late, his irritation with Drew still seething from their recent boardroom confrontation. Ned was silently watching everything develop, calculating as always. Brooke Lynn lurked in the corner, feigning curiosity but plainly distracted by her own anxieties. And Nina? She was there under the appearance of supporting Drew, but her presence was clearly upsetting to everyone else. Tracy took a leisurely drink of her tea, then gently laid her cup down and stared straight at Michael. "You know," she started, her tone deceptively conversational, "I've always said this family thrives on secrets. But there's one secret that's destined to do more than simply rattle a few cages. It's going to burn down the entire courtroom." Everyone froze. Drew's jaw clenched. Nina's smile faded in an instant. Michael blinked, visibly braced for impact. Tracy didn't wait for permission. "Drew and Nina are sleeping together," she remarked plainly. "Have been for some time. And they've both been lying about it. To you, to Willow, and to the court presiding over the custody case." A terrible quiet followed. Nina's mouth opened but no sound came out. Drew jumped up abruptly, his chair squeaking against the floor. Michael looked like he'd been sucker punched. Tracy, Drew replied, seeking to recover his calm. That's not. Oh, don't insult our intelligence, she cut in harshly. You think I can't spot an affair when I see one? I invented the art of scandal detection, and this little show you two have been putting on is paper thin. Nina finally found her voice. This is a lie. You're doing this to undermine me. Oh please, Tracy snapped. You discredited yourself the minute you started sneaking around with a man who's involved in a custody dispute with your stepdaughter's family. You didn't simply cross a boundary, Nina. You detonated it. Michael stood up suddenly, his eyes tightening on both Drew and Nina. Is it true? He asked, his voice low and deadly. Are you two involved? Neither answered at first. The stillness was all the confirmation he needed. Unbelievable, he said, shaking his head. You lied to the court, to Willow, hell, to everyone. Nina tried to step forward. Michael, please, it's not like that. Really? Because it sure as hell looks like that, he snapped. You're using your connection to Drew to influence the custody situation with Wiley. You're attempting to look like the stable one, the trustworthy one, while manipulating the entire legal system behind the scenes. And Drew? You're meant to be neutral. What happened to integrity? Drew seemed truly stricken. Michael, this wasn't about leverage. I never meant for it to affect the custody case. Well, it does, Tracy responded forcefully. Whether you meant to or not. And you know what else? If the court finds out you two are involved, and you didn't reveal it, there's a high chance the order on Wiley's visitation could be thrown out. Perjury, obstruction, manipulation, you name it. You guys just given Sonny's legal team a golden ticket. The fallout was swift. Brooke Lynn, apparently terrified, departed the room without a word. Ned glanced at his cousin with a mix of hatred and disappointment. Even Olivia, who had been attempting to remain neutral in recent months, turned aside as if she couldn't stomach what she'd just heard. Nina's phone began vibrating in her purse, but she didn't go for it. She couldn't move. Everything Tracy had said was true, maybe not in the spiteful tone she'd used, but in fact there was no rebuttal. She and Drew had crossed lines. Emotional lines. Legal ones. And the ramifications were coming faster than either of them could ready for. Later that day, the ripple effects continued in the Metro Court. Carly, who had heard whispers of the bombshell Tracy had dropped, accosted Drew in a secluded area of the foyer. So it's true, she asked, arms crossed, her voice low but full of edge. You and Nina? Drew didn't try to dispute it. Yeah, he answered, it's true. Carly just stared at him. You said you were done being manipulated, that you wanted to safeguard your family, and you end up in bed with her? I didn't plan for it, Drew remarked, his voice tinged with remorse. It just happened. We were both coping with the consequences of everything. Sonny, the SEC, the family stuff. You think that excuses it? Carly snapped. You're a father, Drew. A leader at ELQ. And you just granted Nina a lifeline she didn't earn. You think she's not going to use this against us now that it's public? She always finds a way to play the victim. And now you've made her believable. By dusk, the entire town was bustling. The discovery wasn't just scandalous, it was hazardous. The judge supervising Wiley's case was known to have zero tolerance for dishonesty. With this unexpected development, Nina's credibility as a potential guardian, or simply a regular visitor, was suddenly in peril. Michael began speaking with his legal team immediately, arguing for a review of the custody order based on undeclared relationships and apparent conflicts of interest. Meanwhile, Willow was caught in the midst of a storm she never asked for. Her faith in Drew had been a fragile but increasing thing, especially after all they'd been through during her illness and the family's implosions. Learning that he had been withholding something so essential from her, and that it concerned her own mother, left her reeling. She didn't lash out, at least not publicly, but her silence in the days that followed said volumes. And when she eventually did speak to Nina, it was with the calm, chilly tone of someone who had met her limit. You said you wanted to rebuild, Willow remarked quietly, standing in the hospital chapel. But you started by lying. Again. Nina was visibly shaken. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I care about Drew, I care about you, but things just became complicated. They always get complicated with you, Willow answered. And somehow everyone else ends up paying the price. The legal gears turned fast after that. Tracy had already provided the information to the family's attorneys, who filed an emergency move for review of the custody agreement. The judge, furious but not shocked, called for a hearing within the week. Suddenly, Nina's entire future with her grandson was hanging by a thread. And Drew, once the moral focus of many talks, now found himself facing possible disciplinary action, not just from the court, but from the ELQ board as well. Tracy, for her part, didn't gloat. Not much anyway. She knew she had delivered a bombshell, but she also knew it was important. Her commitment was never to individuals. It was to the legacy of the Quartermain name, to the integrity of the family business, and to preserving the younger generation from the mistakes of the past. If Drew and Nina were to become collateral damage for that to happen, so be it. The week dragged on with hushed conversations, emergency meetings, and damaged relationships. By the time the hearing arrived, the courtroom was filled. Reporters lined the rear wall. Sonny stood toward the front, his arms crossed, his countenance unreadable. Nina, apparently shaken, sat next her attorney. Drew, seated alone, stared down at his notes, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. When the judge addressed the court, her words were cold and direct. This court does not look kindly on withheld information that may affect the welfare of a child. The romantic relationship between Ms. Reeves and Mr. Kane should have been reported. As such, the visitation agreement will be temporarily suspended pending further review. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Nina's eyes flooded with tears. Willow didn't react. Michael, seated beside her, merely nodded. Outside the courtroom, Tracy stood into the sunlit steps of the courthouse, staring out over Port Charles with her typical steely expression. Another fight fought. Another truth disclosed. In her world, secrets were always a currency. And this time she'd used them to defend the people who meant most. General Hospital spoilers reveal SASHA Gilmore Corbin's world was just rocked when Rick Lansing questioned curiosity in her inborn child's paternity, while SASHA was under oath. Now, as SASHA, she uncovers Nina Reeves' manipulative role in identifying Michael Corinthos as the father of her unborn child. A truth Nina supplied to Rick during the custody battle for Emilia Corinthos and Wiley Corinthos. The discovery, which burst in court last week, has SASHA reeling. Realizing Nina's involvement caused her to confess under oath. Now, bearing a bombshell of her own, that Nina and Drew Quartermain were intimate when Drew was involved with Willow Corinthos, SASHA confronts a choice. Will she expose this knowledge to Willow, exposing Nina's betrayal, or keep silent to avoid further disruption in the ongoing custody fight? SASHA is expected to soon uncover Nina's role in disclosing Michael's paternity, destroying their delicate trust. SASHA, already worried from her public confession and labor scare, feels manipulated, knowing Nina's actions were likely aimed to disrupt Michael and Carly Spencer's case. Holding the explosive truth about Nina's past connections with Drew, SASHA might see a chance to retaliate. If she confronts Nina, will she hold her knowledge tight, or let it slip to Willow in a moment of anger? Spoilers say the Drew Nina secret could burn Willow. SASHA's revelation that Nina was sexual with Drew during his relationship with Willow might hurt Willow, who's already reeling from Drew's duplicity about paying a nurse to lie during her Germany visit to Michael. If SASHA reveals this, maybe in a heated exchange at a post-hearing party, it might undermine Willow's trust in both Drew and her mother, hurting her custody stance. With Rick and Diane Miller circling, the consequences might disrupt the courtroom dynamics, but SASHA risks alienating Nina and compromising her personal ties to Michael. Will she throw Nina under the bus or hold back to defend her own position? SASHA's decision could change the custody dispute. Exposing Nina's affair with Drew would bolster Michael's case, depicting Willow as surrounded by dishonesty, but it might also backfire if Willow rallies in resistance. Carly and Sonny Corinthos would grasp any advantage, but Jason Morgan's role in the paternity ruse adds stress. Fans are talking about SASHA's next move, with some pushing her to spill the tea on Nina. Is SASHA's revelation about Nina's dirty tricks going to torch Willow's world, or will she keep the secret to avoid more turmoil? SASHA had always tried to take the high road, especially when it came to Nina. Their history was complicated, filled of deception and sorrow, but there had also been times of genuine care. Nina had previously claimed SASHA as her daughter, And even though the truth eventually shattered that illusion, SASHA had still believed they could build something honest from the debris. For a while it seemed plausible. Nina had supported SASHA through unthinkable loss, addiction, and suffering. In response, SASHA had been loyal, even when others urged her not to trust Nina totally. But that commitment had limitations, and now, SASHA was being forced to confront just how deep Nina's latest betrayal went. It started gently, as most scandals do. A stray comment overheard at the Metro court. An weirdly timed phone call. A gaze exchanged between Nina and a sketchy person she pretended not to know. At first SASHA brushed it off. Nina had made mistakes, yeah, but she'd been trying to make amends. She was rebuilding bridges with Willow, battling to retain Sunny in her life, and presenting herself as a reformed woman. SASHA wanted to believe in redemption. She needed to believe it, especially after everything she'd suffered. But the inconsistencies started stacking up. SASHA's name had been dragged into a deal she had no role in. Her image had been used without authorization in a campaign Nina swore was cleared. And then there were suspicions that Nina had been engaged in pushing an anonymous tip to the SASHA, the very scandal that had split the Corinthos family apart. SASHA didn't want to believe it. Not again. But something about the way Nina evaded, the way she transferred blame, triggered an old and familiar dread. The final straw came when SASHA overheard a conversation between Martin and Nina. It was brief, muted behind a cracked door at the Quartermain mansion, but obvious enough. Nina had contrived a scenario to protect herself, using SASHA's name as cover in a business maneuver that could have placed SASHA in legal problems if it had gone awry. She had done it without telling her, without asking, and without regret. The wrath that surged through SASHA in that moment was different from anything she had felt before. It wasn't explosive. It was frigid, focused, controlled. She didn't face Nina immediately away. Instead, SASHA finished her homework. She discreetly began asking questions, pulling strands. What she discovered formed a heartbreaking picture. Nina had utilized SASHA's image and public goodwill to lessen criticism on herself, utilizing SASHA's past flaws as both a diversion and a shield. It wasn't just about business. It was personal. Nina had taken advantage of SASHA's sorrow, her recuperation, and her yearning for stability, and turned it into a weapon. By the time SASHA stood face to face with Nina, the dynamic had shifted entirely. Nina greeted her with a smile, unaware that anything was wrong. SASHA said nothing at first. She watched Nina let her talk, let her tell the same polished stories she usually did. But SASHA wasn't that naive girl anymore. She had fought through addiction, through grief, through a mental collapse. She had clawed her way back to stability. And now she had power of her own, the power of truth. When she finally spoke, SASHA's remarks were quiet but razor-sharp. She laid forth everything she knew. The phony endorsements, the sleazy transactions, the way Nina had sold her out to save face. Nina tried to deny everything at first, but SASHA had proof. Documents, messages, and one damning voicemail that made it plain Nina had been willing to let SASHA take the fall if things went wrong. The look on Nina's face transformed from uncertainty to panic. SASHA didn't yell. She didn't weep. She just announced with chilling conviction that she was done. Done covering for Nina. Done forgiving her. Done protecting her from consequences. And in that instant, Nina recognized she'd lost something she could never restore. SASHA's trust. Word began to spread swiftly. SASHA didn't need to go public. Not yet, but she made sure the correct people knew what had happened. Michael, Carly, Willow, even Sunny heard whispers. Suddenly Nina found herself isolated. Her attempts to reframe the situation were viewed with mistrust. People were no longer giving her the benefit of the doubt. SASHA, by contrast, was hailed as courageous. Someone who had broken free from a destructive cycle and stood up for herself at last. Some worried if SASHA would go even further, if she would publicly expose Nina, or take legal action. And while SASHA didn't admit anything explicitly, she made it apparent she was contemplating her choices. She wasn't interested in retribution, she added, just accountability. But those who knew her well could see that SASHA wasn't simply seeking justice. She was defending herself, ensuring she'd never be used again. In private, Nina was unraveling. Her grasp on Sunny was slipping. Willow, once open to forgiveness, had grown chilly again. Even Valentine, who had always had a conflicted attachment for Nina, was keeping his distance. Nina tried to reach out to SASHA, through texts, through Martin even showing up unannounced, but SASHA ignored every overture. She had made her choice. Brooke Lynn, who had grown close to SASHA during previous months, became one of her harshest supporters. She called out Nina's actions publicly, refusing to let her change the narrative. Maxie too took SASHA's side, vowing to stand by her friend and help mend any damage Nina's machinations had caused. SASHA, who formerly felt alone in every storm, now had allies, people who praised her for standing up. Nina, facing the ramifications, finally began to crumble. She blamed stress. She blamed grief. She even blamed her desperation to keep her family together. But none of it changed the truth. She had lied, deceived, and endangered someone who trusted her. And SASHA had had enough. The question now isn't whether SASHA will throw Nina under the bus. She already has, in her own quiet manner. The question is how far it will go. Will SASHA testify if legal action arises? Will she tell her story publicly, possibly in a feature interview or press statement? Or will she continue to let the facts speak for themselves, allowing Nina's reputation to shatter beneath the weight of her own misdeeds? Regardless of the next step, one thing is certain. SASHA is no longer the frail, wounded young lady who once searched for love in all the wrong places. She's stronger now, wiser, and more dangerous to her foes because of it. Nina may have imagined she could play the long game, that she could manipulate, twist, and seduce her way into forgiveness once again. But she miscalculated. She underestimated SASHA's growth, her resilience, and her reluctance to be anyone's scapegoat. Now, the very person Nina once used as a pawn may be the one who brings her entire house of cards crumbling down. As Port Charles watches the aftermath unfold, one message rings loud and clear. SASHA is done being silent. And Nina, after all her strategizing, is finally confronting the repercussions she never believed would catch up to her. Until she became belligerent. A confrontation with another patron escalated, and by the time the police arrived, Natalia was too drunk to reason with. Her arrest was humiliating. A public spectacle that left her family ashamed and her friends torn between sympathy and frustration. Some whispered that she needed help, while others had simply run out of patience. The real question was, what would this mean for her now? A night in jail, a court date, fines, or worse? And would she finally acknowledge she had a problem? Or would this be just another rock bottom before an even deeper fall? Meanwhile, Lucky, the steady, dependable presence in their group, had dropped a bombshell. He was leaving town. No grand farewell. No lengthy explanation. Just a quiet decision that left everyone stunned. Lucky had always been the one to mediate conflicts, offer support, and keep the peace. His absence would leave a void, and the reasons behind his departure were the subject of rampant speculation. Had Natalia's drama driven him away? Was he running from something, or toward something? Some wondered if he had secrets of his own, a life beyond what they knew. Others worried that his exit signaled the end of an era, the unraveling of the friendships that had once seemed unbreakable. The timing of these events felt almost cruel. SASHA, in her most vulnerable state, needed her support system more than ever. Yet here she was, navigating motherhood while one friend was in legal trouble, and another was disappearing without a trace. Would Natalia's arrest force her to confront her demons, or would it push her further into self-destruction? And without Lucky's calming influence, how would the group dynamic shift? The balance they had all relied on was tipping, and no one knew what came next. Then there were the ripple effects, the families, the partners, the bystanders pulled into the drama. Natalia's parents were devastated, torn between enabling her and cutting her off. SASHA's family, while overjoyed by the baby, worried about her facing parenthood amid so much instability. And Lucky's sudden exit left unanswered questions for those who had depended on him. Had anyone truly known him, or had he been playing a role all along? The baby, oblivious to the chaos, became a symbol of hope and a stark reminder of responsibility. SASHA's determination to give her daughter a better life was unwavering, but the challenges ahead were daunting. Would she have to distance herself from Natalia for the sake of her child? Would Lucky's departure mean losing touch with others in the group? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: life would never be the same. In the end, these three events, birth, downfall, and farewell, were intertwined in ways no one could have foreseen. Each moment carried its own lessons, its own pain, and its own potential for redemption. As the dust settled, the question remained. Would these trials break them or force them to grow in ways they never imagined? Only time would tell. Today's episode starts with Anna Devane, who has filled Jason Morgan in on her suspicions about Professor Dalton, and he agrees to get all the information that he can on him. As the conversation is wrapping up, Aiden Turner comes out from the shadows and accuses them of something sinister. Jason leaves, and she continues to scold Anna for setting a bad example. Turner makes it very clear that she is going to run for district attorney, and she has every intention of running Sonny Corinthos out of town. After Anna leaves, Turner gets a call about Natalia Ramirez being in custody. Jen Sidwell and Jordan Ashford are talking business and about how Jens is funding Professor Dalton's important research, when his son Marco Rios arrives. Jordan leaves and Marco suggests that he have a plan B for Measure C. Marco points out that if Sonny is willing to make a deal with him and sell him the peers, he still has a problem. If Measure C passes, then they will still confiscate them from him. Whoever owns them would then lose them. Sidwell feels confident that Measure C won't pass if Sonny willingly gives up the peers, and continues to hold his ground. While they talk, Natalia calls Marco and he lets it go to voicemail. She leaves a message telling him that she's at PCPD and needs his help. Sidwell reminds Marco that if he ever wants to get into the family business, he can be his right-hand man. Natalia sobers up and realizes she's in trouble. Natalia is in an interrogation room at the PCPD, making demands despite blowing a .12 on the breathalyzer. When Molly Lansing Davis comes in and sits down, Molly has been handed her DUI case, but once she realizes that she has a personal conflict with Natalia, she leaves. Natalia finally gets her phone call and leaves a message for her son Marco. While waiting, Aiden Turner comes in and wants to ask her some questions about Sonny. General Hospital recap. June 6th. Michael and Sasha introduce Daisy and Drew Simmers with rage after leaving Sidwell. Jordan heads over to Curtis Ashford's in the hopes of seeing Marshall Ashford since he is in town. Curtis has just finished filling in Marshall on some of the problems in his marriage to Portia Robinson, and now he brings Jordan up to speed. She listens and tells Curtis that she doesn't believe that Portia intended to lie to him. She suggests that for once, he not rush to judgment, and instead look for ways to repair it. Curtis says that he knows he can't make any decisions until he is sure that Portis is safe from Drew Kane. General Hospital recap. June 6th. Michael and Sasha introduce Daisy and Drew Simmers with rage. Nina Reeves is relieved to find out that Willow Corinthos hasn't returned to the home that she shares with Drew yet. He tells her that the minute she gets home, she will find out that it was her mother who drugged him, and their relationship will be over. Nina tells Drew that if he tells Willow that, then she will tell Willow that they were sleeping together for a year, and then Willow will have nothing to do with either of them. Drew tells Nina that nothing is going to make him lose Willow, and once she has custody of the kids, they will be moving to DC to start a whole new life. Nina realizes that no matter what she does, she can't save Willow. Sasha Corbin and Michael Corinthos' daughter was born early, but she is healthy. They introduce Daisy to Sonny before anyone else. Michael then talks privately with Sonny about the firebombing and the high price that he has paid to be his son. He says that he has no regrets and loves his father. As they talk, it started quietly, as most scandals do. A stray comment overheard at the Metro Court. An oddly timed phone call. A look exchanged between Nina and a shady contact she pretended not to know. At first Sasha brushed it off. Nina had made mistakes, yes, but she'd been trying to make amends. She was rebuilding bridges with Willow, fighting to keep Sonny in her life, and presenting herself as a changed woman.